welcome to Menopause Rescue. I'm Dr. Polly Watson. Midlife women are often caught up in a sea of symptoms. Too often, they're overwhelmed by the lack of support from mainstream healthcare. They're inundated with so-called experts who are selling solutions which may lack credibility. I'm a Menopause Society certified gynecologist with both traditional and functional medicine training. I'm here to guide you through this transition and help you decipher the facts from the fads. Armed with credible information, I hope you are empowered to rescue and restore your health, making the second half of your life your best. Welcome to Menopause Rescue. I'm your host, Dr. Polly Watson, and I'm so excited to have Dr. Amy Ingram with me today. Dr. Ingram is a functional medicine doctor, and she's also here to shine a light on mold-related illnesses. So Dr. Ingram, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and allowing me to share this information for so many people.
So, Dr. Ingram, neither you or I were taught anything about mold-related illness when we went to medical school. And I would maybe argue that it wasn't a feature when we went through functional medicine training. So you have really done a lot of additional work on your own. Can you kind of tell us what led you to really dive into mold-related illness?
Yeah, absolutely. Like many of us in functional medicine, it was our own health journey. I was already working in integrative health and didn't really know much about mold. Actually told my partner, "Hey, I'm not interested in this mold thing. I don't get it. Can't get my head wrapped around it." But as fate would be, we happened to have mold in that office. Slowly over about a year, everybody in the office was starting to get sick, and we realized there was a problem. And it happened to be in the wall between me and our nurse. So we were the sickest. And I was sent to, I went to see conventional doctors, workers' comp doctors. They all said, you're crazy. There's nothing to this. It's just an allergy. The only thing mold does is cause allergies. So I had to figure a lot of this out on my own. I actually had to quit working for a little while. And as I was improving my own health, I realized there are so many people out there. I've got to share this information with others. So that's why I started my practice, because I want people to know that that you're not crazy. This is not in your head. This is not just your hormones. And there's so much that can be done about this. And we're finding that about 60 to 75% of homes actually have mold in them. So this is a real issue. So that's how I got where I am.
Yeah, and we both live in North Carolina. So if you live on coastal North Carolina, we've had a lot of severe storms, flooding, right? And then Asheville area, Western North Carolina, that's never supposed to have that, had Hurricane Helene this year. And then it's just the South, right? It's really humid. And so I think sometimes when I bring up mold to patients, when they come in and they're exhausted and they're having really bad headaches and they're having just systemic inflammatory issues, their mitochondria seem zapped. And I bring up mold. Sometimes people think that I'm like suggesting that they're not good house cleaners or that they don't have a nice house. And so maybe you could kind of talk about that just a little bit, because like I'm assuming the office you were working in looked like a really nice office, right? There was not anything anyone could obviously see.
Yeah, and it's not a housekeeping issue. It's not mold in your bathroom. It is, and it's not just the humidity outside. Unfortunately, a lot of the newer houses are actually being built with mold in them. The lumber that they put behind the sheetrock has sat outside. It's soft, tender wood. It's not the old, sturdy wood that houses were built in the past. So it got wet when it rained outside as it was sitting around. Mold spores got on it. They put it in the house. They put it behind sheetrock. It's nice and warm and cozy back there, and it flourishes. Of course, we also have to think about basements and crawl spaces. They are just notoriously dark and damp. That's unfortunately where a lot of people put their HVAC system is in the basement, and then it becomes contaminated. HVAC sometimes aren't sufficient. They get condensation. So it is getting to be more and more of an issue as we build our homes and we live in our homes differently.
Yeah, we've had mold in our house also. And It was because the HVAC unit wasn't properly sized for the house, right? And so HVACs dehumidify at home, and it was trying to push cold air into the house before it had a chance to get dehumidified. And the way we discovered it is my son, who lives, like, we live in a split level ranch, so he's basically in the underground part. He broke out in hives all over. And, it took 6 months to get into the allergist. He did this skin testing, and the only thing the child reacted to was mold. And he said, "You've got an exposure somewhere." And then that was it. That was all my help. "You've got an exposure somewhere. Go find it." Right. Um, and so we were trying to make our house better. And then the folks we were working with just didn't understand the civil engineering or of how HVACs work. Right. And then, a lot of money later and a lot of health concerns later, here we are. So
Yeah. Well, good for the allergist that he said, hey, there's an exposure.
yes, yes. And so, there's a lot of overlap with mold and a lot of hormonal issues, right? So a lot of women in perimenopause, they're coming in with fatigue, they're coming in with weight gain, they're coming in with brain fog. They might be having a lot of muscle pain. And so a lot of those issues sort of overlap, right? And also other hormonal imbalances like PCOS, kind of the same thing. Weight gain, estrogen dominance, really heavy periods. So when someone's coming into your office, what are the things that kind of help you start thinking that this might be a mold patient so that you can kind of direct your testing from there?
Yeah, yeah. And it is hard. That's why I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, because mold is estrogenic. It actually can alter and change and work on the estrogen receptors. And so being in a moldy environment makes someone estrogen excess to begin with. But you're right of the overlap of symptoms. So how do I kind of tease it out? I look at a variety of symptoms over a variety of different body parts. That's one big way to do it, because we have to remember that it's not just that mold is not just an allergy. It's the toxins and what the toxins are doing in our body. But it's also the immune system. Mold trashes the immune system, and it really, really trashes the gut. The mold toxins can actually affect the gut. So when I'm hearing with some of the symptoms that you mentioned, plus gut, plus nasal, plus respiratory, it's that and. So I'm hearing a variety of symptoms over a variety of body parts. And it just came to mind, headaches is a huge one, headaches, fatigue. And then one of the other big things that helps me discern is if somebody says, I just went on vacation and I drank and I ate awful. I should feel bad, but I felt so much better when I was on vacation. That's another clue that makes me think, what's going on either in your work environment or your home environment?
Right. I love that you added on headaches, right? So you were talking about mold being an immune dysregulator. And sometimes we call folks that are sensitive to mold who have long-term issues chronic immune response syndrome, right? And so I sort of put this analogous to like long COVID. The immune system is in the I'm going to attack everything all the time mode. It never gets back to the sort of immunosenescence, that kind of balance of, okay, and now we need to get the kids back in school, and now we need to get clean water and electricity after a storm. And like I think about the balancing part of the immune system is sort of the Red Cross, and the other one, like the SWAT team, they're dropping the bombs, right? So you're sort of stuck in this SWAT team, we're going to attack everything, and the Red Cross never gets to come in and kind of get life back to normal, right? And so you mentioned gut and headache, and we see a lot of histamine dysregulation in these people. So oftentimes you and I, and 20 plus years ago in medical school, we were thinking about histamine as sort of upper respiratory, right? Nasal symptoms, watery eyes, postnasal drip. But we also know that we have a ton of histamine receptors in our gut. We have a ton of histamine receptors in our head. And so that headache and gut disruption can be a tip off. And another thing, sometimes mold patients present with really weird electric shock syndrome or symptoms. Like they'll give you this really bizarre neurologic sounding symptom. And you can see why, not that it's excusable, but why a lot of folks that aren't familiar with that, like, this person's crazy. They're telling me they have electric shock syndrome, but they really do, right? Did you experience that with your mold? Do you know what I'm talking about?
That's funny. Yeah, I did. I hear frequently people say they get electrical shock just walking across the floor. They feel like there's a electrical vibration in their body. Some people get very sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies from computers. I did. My left hand, I always sat on my computer. And when I would sit it on my computer for too long, I get like a burning sensation in my hand. And this is the craziest thing. I'd have to actually go outside and dig a hole and put my hand in the ground to kind of ground my hand. But yes, it is a very common thing. And I will have to say, I love what you said about the immune system. But remember, it's not just the immune system that gets on high alert. It's also the vagus nerve, the very primitive part of the brain, gets stuck in this I'm not safe. And we get a lot of anxiety and mood issues. So even after people have gotten out of the moldy environment, we have to go back and work on, even during healing, we have to work on that limbic system. And like you said, so many people are, I'm just trying to get electricity. Of course, I'm not safe. We've just had, big issues. So I also look at the brain and the vagus nerve.
Right. So if folks aren't familiar, the vagus nerve is your 10th cranial nerve, and vagus means wandering. So this is the nerve that goes back by your ears, along your sternocleidomastoid muscle, under your heart, and into your gut. So it's kind of regulating sympathetic versus parasympathetic state. I'm running away from the tiger versus I'm in rest and digest. So your immune system with mold is in high alert and your nervous system is in high alert. And so I'm really glad you tied that in, Dr. Ingram, because like so many patients become super reactive. Again, they present in the Western medicine space that, legitimately doesn't give any training on this issue. You and I are learning about this issue, right? And someone would have a glass of water and break out in hives. And because their immune system and their nervous systems, it's almost like their cells have PTSD. They're going to see everything as an insult or an attack, and the water just might be really cold, and that was enough to set their cells off. So someone comes in, they're tired, they have pretty bad headaches, they have some nerve stuff, maybe they have some upper respiratory sinus stuff. What is the first place you look from a diagnostic perspective when you're again trying to kind of piece the puzzle? And we always want to keep in mind that people could be in perimenopause and have PCOS and have mold on top of it, right? It's not necessarily one or the other, but like, how do you know to go sort of down the mold rabbit hill, if you will?
So if they have multiple symptoms, that's one of the big ones. And I frequently do an MSQ, which is a medical symptoms questionnaire. And do you use something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the one I have gives you a total at the end. And if they're up above a certain level, there's different MSQs. So I'm not going to say a specific number, but mine has a little decoder at the bottom. If it's above a certain amount, it says it's potentially a toxic. So that's always where I start, is with an MSQ. And a really, really good history, where you live in, how do you feel when you're at home versus not at home or work. So a good history. Unfortunately, there's not much on physical exam that we can see. And then I kind of get into, there's different kinds of testing. And there is no one perfect test. And so sometimes it has to take several different tests to find out. And there's testing for the body and there's testing for the home. So I want to first start with testing for the body. There's a very simple way to start with a visual contrast sensitivity test. It is, you go on the computer, you can sign up for, it's actually free, vsctest.com is free. They ask for a donation. So if you want, you can give $10, but it's a good place for people to start, remembering that these people are very brain foggy. But because their brain is inflamed, also that's your vision. So this computer test got some gray and white lines. You sit at your computer, you say, yep, I see that one. Yes, I said, oh, I don't see that one. I don't see that one. So at the end, it gives you a score if this may be, again, a toxin. Now, it's not specific for mold. It's anything that's causing brain inflammation, but it's a good place to start because, as far as I know, hormones is not going to alter their visual contrast sensitivity.
Yeah, so we use that a lot too. I love the fact that it's quick and easy. I love the fact that it's not super expensive. I think it's about 90% sensitive. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And then I think this was developed by the military. So if I was a soldier in Afghanistan and I was exposed to neurotoxin as a biohazard, right? You didn't want to put me back into battle if my brain wasn't working correctly. And so it's just a really quick thing. Are the lines going to the left or the right? Or are they going up and down, etc.? You can assess very quickly, like 5 minutes maybe, and then give someone a score. And then if that's out of range, then you're concerned. So we use VCS testing a lot. It's not perfect, but it's really accessible and it kind of helps point us in a direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're not soldiers in Afghanistan. So in terms of neurotoxins, right, mold would be the most common neurotoxin we might be exposed to, although I would assume pesticides would be another one. But, most of my patients aren't agricultural workers or someone who is constantly being exposed to pesticides more than I guess we all are all the time, right? But they're not spraying it directly. So you start with a VCS test. What's next?
Then sometimes I will go on to do further testing, such as urine or blood. Again, there's no perfect test. The urine test is measuring what toxins you're urinating out. And if you're not getting rid of toxins very well, then they're not going to show up in your urine. So if somebody is really sick and kind of their detox system is plugged up, might want to think about a blood test, which is an antibody test for toxins. And again, we have to be careful with this one because if their immune system is erect, we might not get a good result for that as well. These tests can start to add up. Yes, ideally, I'd love to do both the urine and the blood, but let me tell you a little bit about the cost of them. So a mycotoxin test, there's different companies that do it. And they can be from $300 to $400. And then the antibody test right now, there's only one company doing it called MyMyco, and theirs is about $380 for a test.
Do you want to talk about any of the Shoemaker labs at all? Are you using any of those?
So Shoemaker, being kind of the guy that got all this started, does a lot of good research. He does have some labs that look at immune response, as well as some of the effects that the body might be having, like frequent urination and checking the antidiuretic hormone. You can get those through LabCorp. Most insurances will cover them. I sometimes will start with that. You never really know whose insurance is going to cover what, so I'm a little bit hesitant. But sometimes I will do a couple of them, like the MSH, which has to do with melatonin, because we know that mold affects the sleep. The antidiuretic hormone is not very expensive. If someone has no antidiuretic hormone, it tells me, hey, the body is wanting to pee out all something. Again, it's not specific to just mold, but it's a good indicator. There's a lot of other tests through them that can start to add up, like the CD3, CD4. So yeah, I do some of them.
Well, I think sometimes I hear what you're saying. Cost is a big issue. And then oftentimes people are facing potentially an enormous cost in getting their home remediated. So you talked a little bit about body test. A VCS test is pretty low hanging fruit. Then there's urine mycotoxin testing, there's blood antibody testing. And then the Shoemaker labs are sort of more markers of immune dysregulation, like you said, things like MSH that are altered in mold. Can you talk a little bit about home testing?
Sure. Now, I always tell people I take care of your body.
Right.
I don't take care of your home, but it is important to know what's the state of your home, and to know if that's the cause, because unfortunately, so many people have been told it's your home, you have to move out. And and I'm always like, hold on, slow down. That's really setting somebody's limbic system into, I am not safe. So testing the home, I always go to, there's good, better, best. And I have a great resource for people. The ICEA, the Institute of the International Society of Environmentally Acquired Illness, has some great resources, and they have a handout on testing your home.
You can upload that to the show notes so people will have that.
Oh, that's awesome. The home testing. So we also have to think about costs. So good, better, best, and what are the costs? A simple, easy way to start might be gravity plates. So that is like a petri dish that you put out in your home, and the mold, because we all have mold. I mean, it's everywhere, but it falls into these dishes and it starts to grow. It has to be. It's not the ones you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and get those. That's not what we're talking about. It has to be from a specific company, and they run so you can get about 5 plates for about $250. Another test is an ERMI or an Hertz Me. I usually start with an ERMI because that does more organisms, and it's just a Swiffer cloth that you use to wipe the dust, and you send it off to their company. If you have carpets, there'll be a different way that they might recommend that you test it. But an ERMI costs about $285, and it gives you a relative moldy index score. So that might be a good place to start because it tells you which organisms as well. And when we get one of these reports, there's some organisms that we're like, oh, that's really a bad guy. That's Stachybotrys. We got to be careful with that guy. Or there's some that are outdoor moles that we're like, okay, that's kind of allergenic, but it doesn't produce a lot of toxins. And then there's, the Aspergillus penicillium that almost everybody has in their home. And then we look at the level of it. If it's really high, that's more of a concern. So there's a lot of nuances in that. And then having a professional come out might be a good thing because they do spore traps. They can also look for areas of high humidity where the mold might be growing, because the Swiffer test, the ERMI, and the spore, they don't tell us where the mold is coming from. It just tells us that it's circulating somewhere in the house. It could have started in the basement and the HVAC is blowing it everywhere. So having a professional come in to do a little bit deeper dive in detective work to figure out the where. And sometimes people do have to cut into walls occasionally and see what's going on behind that. They are a lot more expensive as well. So that's kind of different levels of testing based on what the home is like.
I think that's really a helpful overview, and it is just like in the medicine part of this, right? Even within functional medicine doctors that are specializing in mold, there are a lot of different kind of strategies, right? There are a lot of different kind of thought leaders that approach this differently. And so I think it's a really tricky area for consumers because on the medical end, there is not an absolute standard of care for medical treatment, nor is there an absolute standard of care for home remediation. And so the ISEAS resource that we'll upload can be really helpful. Ideally, you're trying to work with a home person that has been certified by an organization. I've had patients be like, oh, my neighbor Dave is a contractor and he's going to come over. And I'm like, Dave's like me 15 years ago. I didn't know anything about mold, right? And so it's not that Dave's a bad guy or not a really good contractor. He just hasn't had the training, right? And so that's where I get really nervous when patients are like, oh, I'm going to do this myself. Like, no, you're not going to do this myself.
If you're the one that's sick, you don't need to be messing with the mold.
Right, exactly.
A certified IEP, indoor environmental professional, will come up with a plan to help with remediation.
Yes, that would be really helpful. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I think it might be helpful to sort of go down the list. So like, what are some symptoms that people might experience with mold-related illness? So can we just kind of go through that list one more time?
It's a long list.
Yeah, it is.
So brain fog, confusion, fatigue. Behavioral changes, mood changes, irritability is a big one, neurological pain, tics and twitches, especially in kids, blurred vision, trouble sleeping, allergy symptoms, nasal congestion. You can even get sinus infections from the fungus, chronic sinus infections. Menstrual cycle changes is really a big one. Since this is an estrogenic state, I have several women who come in just profusely with heavy cycles, or having stopped having cycles in perimenopause and now it's started again. Chronic yeast infection, because remember, yeast is a fungus, and once we have a fungus among us, we get more of them. A hoarse voice, trouble breathing, frequent respiratory infections, abdominal pain and bloating is a big one. And the gut, oh my goodness, heartburn, constipation, diarrhea.
Yeah, lots and lots of symptoms. Weight gain, right? Mold affects leptin. And so I've had patients that were CrossFit instructors. They could have taught me about diet and exercise, right? And they had put on 50 pounds and could not get it off. And so getting that patient's leptin and showing her that was out of whack was so validating for her. Like, she just burst into tears because I think she finally was like, it wasn't her fault. Like, there is really medically something going on here. And that was really validating.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And leptin can be checked in through LabCorp. It's not, I mean, Shoemaker talks about leptin, but it's not usually one of the ones that we frequently check. But it's available through LabCorp. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I think it's really validating when people are struggling to show them, hey, this isn't about counting your macros. Like, something biologically is going on here. So we talked a little bit about testing for mold in our bodies and in our homes. One thing that comes up a lot with that is when you have one person in the family who is feeling like the bottom's falling out. They can't string a sentence together. They're really struggling at work. They can't sleep. They're exhausted. They're irritable. And the other partner sometimes is completely fine. And that person is often like, this is all in your head because we're living in the same moldy environment and I'm fine and you're not. And so can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that partners really need to hear this.
Yes.
And anyway, I would love for you to explain that to folks.
And it is huge. And a lot of times it's the woman the female in the house that is more susceptible to the symptoms. And there's a lot of reasons for this. And I've got to back up and be a little nerdy, and because it's all about your ability to get rid of toxins. And we've always said that there's a genetic predisposition, and you can check the HLA, which there's so much more to it than that. You can have someone who doesn't have the HLA susceptibility for mold, but it's really about what is their toxic barrel. So I always make an analogy that you've got a barrel of how much toxins your body can handle. Some people have a big barrel, some people have a little barrel. And toxins are always coming into us, whether it's mold toxins or, I mean, even every breath that we take is a metabolic process that makes some toxins. Every time we eat and we digest, we get toxins. Then all the environmental toxins that are coming into the same barrel. We also have to think about histamine and estrogen are things our body make, but we have to at some point get rid of those and metabolize them. So that goes into the same barrel. How do we empty our barrel? So we have spigots, which is really detoxification pathways. And some people have big spigots and some people have little spigots or lots of them or not so many of them. And then sometimes they just get plugged up. We've just got too much coming in and we can't get rid of it all. Once we overflow our barrel, that's when we start having symptoms. As long as you're below your threshold of your toxic barrel, you probably feel okay. It's the overflowing that we have to start when we start seeing symptoms. So it's always hard to tell who has good detoxification and who has what toxins coming in. Another place that we have to think about that can interfere with our detox pathways is when someone has other infections, chronic infections, long COVID, Lyme's disease, dental infections. This is also contributing to that toxic load, and it stresses the detox pathways. So it's not just we're all living in this same home that might be moldy. It's how big is your barrel? How well are you able to empty your barrel? Is your barrel overflowing? Is that why you're having symptoms?
Yeah, I love that analogy of the barrel. And I would just also think you alluded to HLA. Some of our audience may not be clear. So, an HLA haplotype is sort of a genetic signature that predisposes someone to have a difficult time clearing mold toxin, but it is not the end all be all. So, sort of like we have other HLA signatures that may increase someone's risk for celiac disease, but they may or may not actually have celiac disease. So, it's not a absolute end all be all test, but I don't order that test very much anymore. But sometimes I'll order it when the partner needs to see something on paper that's different. I also love the toxin analogy in the sense that the average woman leaves the house with 100 different toxins on her body, right? So in terms of cosmetics, hair dye, hair products, fragrances, women are usually consuming way more of these toxic products maybe than men are, right? And I think another thing where that is kind of a tip off if you're a poor detoxifier is usually those people like me are super sensitive to chemical fragrances, right? My toxic bucket, I am like treading water at the toxic bucket. I have a little tiny spigot, right? And so when someone comes into my office with perfume on, they have to leave because I will have a headache for 3 days. Like I cannot function through their appointment because I will shut down really quickly. And so if they are sensitive to fragrances, sometimes we ask if they're sensitive when they're pumping gasoline, if they smell the gasoline smell. If they're at the mall and they walk past like the perfume counter, if they're like bypassing that to try to get it. Who goes to the mall anymore? But that used to be a helpful analogy. Anything else that helps you know that someone's a poor detoxifier?
That's a great one. I'm glad you added that about the perfumes and fragrances. People who are not good detoxers, they sometimes there's more foods that they can't tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
I'll hear that occasionally, whether it's foods with sulfur, and I don't mean their gut. I mean like their whole body, like
Right.
they get nasal congestion, whether it's sulfur foods or foods with not just the Asian um, added food additive, but any other kind of preservatives. We see a lot of that in kids. They tend to get more behavioral issues with some of these chemical exposures as well.
And so another analogy I might make, because oftentimes like this is a huge relationship conflict, right? One person's feeling really poorly. They're coming to a healthcare provider saying you need to spend, I mean, sometimes it could be $100,000 to get your house, the HVAC, like tear out sheetrock. We spent a lot of money getting our house back. And sometimes that other partner really doesn't get it. And I'll say, hey, look, let's think about it. If you and I went out and I had a glass of wine and one glass of wine, I'm going to be drunk because I don't clear the alcohol very well. I don't drink very much, right? Versus someone who has half a bottle of wine a night, they have a glass of wine and you don't notice a difference at all. And so not everybody detoxes the same. Just, if you put the alcohol analogy out there, sometimes they get it because they might have seen that in real life and they have a colleague that, or maybe themselves, they can process a lot of toxin and they keep rolling versus someone else who is a cheap date like myself, right?
I love that. I think I'm going to start using that to try and explain it because it's always hard to explain to the spouse why this one particular person doesn't feel good.
Right. So you have given the world a gift. You've made this class on mold, which is really helpful because again, Western North Carolina just got hit with Hurricane Helene and my mom lives up there and federal funding is getting cut to go even clean up the debris. I mean, it's just unbelievable what these people have lived through. So a lot of healthcare providers aren't trained in mold. And so a lot of patients and consumers are kind of left like, where can I get help? So I would love it if you could share with us. Tell us about the class you've developed, who's it for, how people can use it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Because I really want to share this information. And it's not just the people in the western part of the state, but as you said, the people in the eastern part of the state, they're just always humid. And then there's all of us in between as well. So um, functional medicine is great for helping people with mold and chronic illnesses. I mean, that's why you and I do what we do. But it can be expensive. I get that. And then the other option is to try and do this on your own, which if you're brain foggy and stressed and you're just trying to, get a safe home, that can be really, really overwhelming. So I've come up with a program that's got 3 different tiers to help people. So our most basic tier is our educational resources. It's a platform that you can go to, and it's got a section on your home, how to find a remediator, how to clean your home, how to test your home. It's got a section on your body and how to detox. Now, it's not any medical treatment, and it is do it yourself, but it's really affordable. For people in North Carolina, it's $15.
Wow, that is affordable.
Yours forever. The next level up, because we know sometimes people need a little guidance and help. The next level up is got the education plus group visits. So we have a Zoom visit at least once a month, usually twice a month, where different people who are at different stages of mold recovery come in because we learn from each other, we get support from each other. We as humans need to be in community. So that level with the basic information plus the mold support that's not for treatment, we do talk about food, we do talk about lifestyle. So that coaching level is $30 a month. And you can stop whenever you're ready and graduate. I love it when people graduate from my mold program. The next level up is because some people do need more one-on-one. So they get one-on-one visits plus the group visits plus the resources. That does not include our initial visit. The initial visit is just $200 because it's very focused. You already know it's mold. I don't have to do a lot of investigation. And then it's $100 a month, and we get a one-on-one visit during that time.
That's an amazing deal. I mean, a lot of functional medicine doctors are $3, $4, $5, $600 an hour. So how long is that one-on-one visit?
It's about 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah,
And it's very focused. And because for some people, we do need to prescribe supplements or even medications. So I
sure.
have to have that physician patient relationship to do any prescribing. I can't do any prescribing in the group visits.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you are offering this group opportunity because I do think that mold is really isolating. Again, your regular doctor didn't get any medical training in mold. I think I finished IFM training and I was learning about mold, but I don't feel like I finished IFM training feeling like I had mold figured out, right? I still like mold is a work in progress and I continue to learn. And then the more I learn, I find somebody else who approaches it completely differently. And then I have to reconfigure, right? But people feel isolated. People feel alone. People feel like they have this mysterious illness and they get where like I'll get these messages. It's like, well, leaf mold is bad and I want to go rake my leaves, and and it just feels so isolating. And so I love the group visit opportunity because it's a place for people. You can have someone who's early in their journey and someone who's about to graduate, and they can look at that person who's about to graduate and really get a lot of hope and support. It's just beautiful what you put together.
Yeah, and mold is very isolating. And I just want to take a little point. We tend to villainize mold and fungus, but it has been around for a long time and it has a purpose. Its purpose is to decay, rotting wood and leaves. And when it gets in our body or in our home, it's just doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is decaying us. And one of the ways, which I know that sounds kind of gross, but that's what it's doing, is producing these toxins. It's growing in us. And as part of that process, the chemicals that it produces does make us isolate ourselves. So not only are we isolated because everybody thinks we're weird, the mold is saying, no, I'm going to take you over here and I'm going to keep you quiet and I'm going to make you tired and I'm going to decay you. So we need to bring light into the people. We need to bring community and energy into these people. That's part of the therapy of healing from mold, is don't let this fungus decay you. Go out into the literal sunshine and go out into the light of being around other people.
Oh, I love that. I think that's a great kind of note to end on, right? Who doesn't need a little bit more light, and that there's so much hope. And so, Dr. Ingram, can you let people know the website where they can find this amazing, very cost-effective class you have created?
Yes, thank you. Because we want to share the light. So my practice is family functional medicine. I am in Greensboro, North Carolina. I can see people across the whole state. And so on the website, there's a resource tab, but also Facebook. We have lots of promotions in our Facebook for family functional medicine that has links to how to get in touch with us and to get some of the resources. So yeah, familyfunctionalmedicine.com.
Fantastic. That is amazing. And I just think that is very generous what you've put together. I mean, really, that is just a gift to the community because so many people could benefit from this and are feeling really lost. And, maybe you're like me and you're a mom and your kid broke out with all these weird hives. And all I got from the allergist was, he has an exposure somewhere. Go find it. That was it. And then he left. Like, there was no like, here's a stack of resources, here's ISEAS, here's any of these things. Like, there wasn't any of that. So this, what you've done is such a wonderful resource and gift. And thank you, because a lot of people could really benefit from this.
And what we do can supplement what other providers. So just because you're seeing someone for hormones, and there's a lot of other providers out there that, like I started out, I'm not going to handle mold. I can work in conjunction with other providers. They can be in my mold group or my one-on-one mold while they're still seeing someone else to work on their gut or their hormones. Because it takes a team. And we're all working together to bring each other home, to walk each other home.
Yes, that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ingram. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and this beautiful class with us. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. And thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Menopause Rescue. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and it helps you create some time and space to make this the best half of your life. If you've enjoyed this content, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. This helps other listeners find this resource and rescue and restore their health. If you enjoyed this topic and want to learn more, check out our resource guide for this episode. If today's podcast resonated with you and you want to take a deeper dive, check out my educational resources. We offer basic membership, which is an archive of over 100 videos on menopausal topics ranging from bone health to libido. We add to this archive every month, so the resource becomes richer and richer over time. If you're looking for a menopause expert and live in North Carolina, take our free online class and see if we're a match for your needs. It's called Are We a Good Fit? And is a quick and easy way to learn more about our practice and what it has to offer. Hey, this is Dr. Watson. This is just a friendly reminder that this podcast is for general information purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine. No doctor-patient relationship is formed, and any information you get from this podcast is considered educational only. You should make medical decisions with your healthcare provider. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice. Listeners should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition, and they should seek assistance from their healthcare professionals.